On the other hand, I think at least among a lot, somebody was saying in one of these conference planning meetings that, I'm a fellow traveler anarchist, and some of my best friends are anarchists. But I would say, if I can see a critique, and I think there's so much important stuff going on, particularly, it's the most common ideology of the young white leftists who are rejecting capitalism. I think it's really important. But sometimes I think the stress is so much on the autonomy and the alternatives, and the part of resistance is often lacking. Like I know I spoke at a program recently in Olympia about building a health clinic. And I think that's a really important thing to do, a free clinic. But somehow the idea that, building a movement to take money from the state to have that, or single payer, those are seen as much, much less important. I think we need to work on both. We need to challenge the state, resist, build power, but also to challenge the state as well as the power and the popular education. So I tend to think, again, I spent 3 months in Venezuela recently, and there's a book by Greg Wilpert, a really good book in Venezuela, talking Changing Venezuela by Taking Power, by Greg Wilpert, Changing Venezuela by Taking Power. The idea was that taking power, whether it's done peacefully through elections, other means, is a step. But it's really enabled the growth of power from below, and I think we need to think much more of this dialectic of challenging the state, taking power from the state to really build power from below. And insofar as this, difference, anarchist, libertarian, socialist, it seems maybe there's difference on the path. I don't think there's many difference among us on the kind of society we'd like to see. So that's, hopefully we can discuss more, some of that in discussion. In terms of what we need, I really do recommend, Michael Albert, Robert Hahnel, The Economic Justice and Democracy. I would call it participatory socialism. Again, the label isn't so important to me, but so, for example, with regards to sustainability, that's almost as inward, and you were saying democracy, Robin, it's very, so is sustainability these days. And, my take on it is that certainly just because society isn't capitalist doesn't mean it won't be any more sustainable. Within capitalism, we're all swimming upstream. But with a participatory socialist society where people really control that society, there's the possibility, not the necessity, of society being sustainable. And even though I don't agree with you about Cuba being a Stalinist society, which was said. I mean, I've been there many times, but nevertheless, society, I think people there, should have more control than they do in Cuba in terms of building that society. Just 1 or 2 comments more participatory socialism, or participatory economy. Things that I would just like to stress here is, again, this question of consumption. A friend of mine was saying a few weeks ago, people here think of the libraries, a good place to get books, and as we know, there's all sorts of cutbacks on libraries these days. But I think a lot of consumption items, like let's say cars, maybe that'd be a library. If you needed a car, you would go on some kind of camping trip, and a car made sense, you would borrow that car. I think if we think about social consumption, not so much individual consumption, I would say even in the United States, 80% of the population could have, same level of consumption as now, maybe more in a social way than an individual way. But, we can discuss some of those numbers in the discussion. Let me just think of a few more things I would like to add. I guess in terms of the theory, I liked a lot, what Cindy Adam was saying about Marxism as really being an important critique of challenge the system. And again, you folks want to add them on class. I would just add again, that again, race and gender as really central forms of oppression, and building movements, just seeing that in the center. You can't separate from class. I don't think you can reduce it to class. And similarly, I think the workplace is a really, really important place to organize, but so is the community, people's daily lives. I think we must think about organizing on a much larger level than we do too. And in this issue about socialism, Robin's saying socialism and anarchists, both have it part right, part wrong. I like what you said. I would add in the socialist part, the issue of equality seems to me is a really important question. I like that we're saying about needs and desires, but if you have a community that's very much based on the local community, and some communities are much richer than others, like, for example, in Bolivia, right, the eastern Bolivia, the whole call for local control, secession, it really is a way of people who have or at least some people, most people in eastern Bolivia are very poor too, in the Santa Cruz region, but people using autonomy to maintain control of resources. If we think of those resources to meet the needs of all people, I think the issue of equality is often missed when we just focus on the local. So the question is, again, how do we coordinate equality on a larger level, but still having control at a very much community-place, workplace level? So I don't think anything else I'd like to add. Just again, a lot of the speakers have spoken that the issue of a vision of a different society, I really want to stress that, Robin, you talked about that a lot, and Robin and I talked a lot for quite a few years. And, but I think without having a vision of a different society, and I'll close with this. I mean, I keep thinking, I keep asking people here who, have color hair like mine, what has kept people active? And I think for myself, besides the thing of being able to look myself in the mirror much better by trying to do something, I would add beyond that, having analysis. And that's why I really do stress, like, figuring out things not in this kind of elitist way that we can have this expertise to impress other people so we're not questioned, but a way of learning about how capitalism can work and other world is possible, together with having some view of the vision of a different society. Because besides the thing that Robin mentioned about that, the left has had a lot of problems in pointing to alternatives, but without it we get stuck. Like, for example, the idea of a living wage. I think it's a really great idea, but if you're focusing on living wage, then within this system you have to think, what does it mean? Will there be loss of jobs? If people get paid a living wage, if you push for a 4-hour work week, will firms just run away, and so on. I mean, 4-hour work day, 4-hour work day. I think that's a reasonable one. And so I think having a vision, of course, the key to me is how do we combine our critique of the existing society, a vision of the future, and a strategy to get there. And I hope some of the engines in this conference will begin to make us move forward to putting revolution on the table again. Thank you.